Yo, today we're gonna finish with the most popular response, which is bishop c5. Now obviously we're also gonna look at the Italian gambit and the Evans gambit and maybe also the Jerome gambit in the next videos. But my main recommendation, the most serious response, is c3. And here in the previous videos we talked about knight f6. But what if black plays d6 in this position? Because actually 1 out of 4 games in this position black goes d6. So that's why we have to talk about this move. Now d6 is not a particularly good move because it doesn't pressure the center. So we can just continue with d4. And now black is forced to go back. I mean, not forced to go back, black is forced to take. If they go back, you're just gonna win a pawn. Because you take here, and then if pawn takes, you exchange the queens. If knight takes, you take this one. If king takes, you take this one. And if knight takes, you take the knight. Pawn takes, you take the queen, you take the pawn. Or you take the pawn, king moves, and then you take the queen. So you're just up a pawn. So that's why black is forced to take, and then you take back. And now we have a pretty similar position to the this line. If you take here, and then bishop b4 check or bishop b6. But the difference is that in the d6 line, take, there is no knight on f6. So this pawn is not hanging. So this is a much better version of that. The main line is bishop b6. There is also obviously bishop b4 check, but let's look at bishop b6 first. Here you play this move h3, and the point is you're preventing bishop g4. Now the most popular move is knight f6, attacking your pawn, but you don't care, you just castle. And the only theory that I'm gonna show you here is what if black grabs the pawn, or if black castles and then you play rook e1. The positions are pretty similar. If knight takes here, you pin the knight, they go d5, defending and attacking your bishop. You sacrifice the bishop, queen takes, and then knight c3. Attacking the queen, attacking the knight. When the queen moves, you're gonna take with the rook, so it's a check. Now, this is basically the same. So we looked at knight takes here. If they castle and then you play rook e1, if they take here, the point is rook takes, again a fork. You still take, queen takes, and then knight c3. So you should remember this idea. Defending the rook, attacking the queen. When the queen moves, you're gonna go d5. So this is basically all you have to know in the bishop b6 line. Obviously there are a lot of other moves. So h3. Black also plays h6 a lot, which is I think the best move. The point is they're preventing bishop g5. But here there is no point in learning theory, you're just gonna develop normally, like knight c3, castles, bishop f4 and so on. So I'm not gonna show you theory because there is no point in memorizing it. Now let's go back. What if bishop b4 check? Now this one is a trickier move, but it's not a better move actually. Bishop b6 is the best. But let's look at bishop b4. Here you block with the knight. This is a common theme. So also in this line we looked at knight c3, which is the best move. I mean, not the best move by engine, but it gives the best chances for the win. So similarly in this case, knight c3. So you block the check. And then black goes knight f6. They can also go bishop g4. The lines will transpose into one another. So let's look at knight f6 first. you castle, you do not care about this pawn, so you castle, and then if bishop takes and then they take, looks like they're attacking another pawn, they just won a pawn, but this is actually losing because rook e1, pin, d5, and then this move bishop a3. Now this is gonna be a common move in the Evans Gambit, which we're gonna look in the next videos. The point of this move is that you're preventing castling. So black cannot castle, so the king is stuck in the center. And obviously if they take, you take the knight. So you're not even sacrificing a piece. Here, for example, black goes bishop e6, the most popular move. And now you can play this ridiculous move, queen b1. Now, obviously, even if you do not remember queen b1, you can see that this position is much better for white because black cannot castle. But queen b1 is a nice move. The point is you're attacking this pawn and also you're preparing to sack the exchange. For example, black defends, let's say they move the rook to defend. Now you sacrifice the exchange, and the point is the bishop is obviously pinned, so they cannot take. The point is you're gonna take and just crash through, and this bishop is just slicing the whole position apart. If they defend the bishop, you can just increase the pressure with rook e1 or knight g5. So obviously we're just completely winning here. Now let's look at, so we looked at bishop takes. What if, for example, bishop g4? This is the same thing as if black plays bishop g4 first, and then you castle, and then they go knight f6. So the same line as knight f6, castles, and bishop g4. Here you're gonna play knight d5. Knight d5 is the move that you're gonna play in almost all of these lines, because the point is that you're attacking, I mean not attacking, but putting pressure on the bishop, so the bishop cannot take anymore, and also you're pressuring this knight because the idea is bishop g5 to pin. Now the only line that you have to know here is what if bishop takes, you take with the g pawn. That's the key. Because if you take with the queen, then you just hang this pawn. So you take with the g pawn, and the idea is, for example, black most likely will take, and then here you're actually just winning a piece. You take back, attacking the knight moves, and then queen a4 check, and just picks up the bishop. Now obviously the idea of g takes f3 is not just to keep defending the pawn, but also to go king h1, rook g1, and attack down the g file, and also bishop g5 to pin the knight if black castles. And I think you can probably sense that this position is winning for white. So let's go back. What if the main line, which is castles? Here you again play knight d5, this move, and now black has two choices. They can take the pawn or they can take the knight. Let's look at the simpler one, which is what if knight takes knight. Obviously if black doesn't do anything, you're just gonna play bishop g5 and pin the knight. So if knight takes knight, you take back with the pawn, knight goes to e7, and now you play queen a4. Here you do not win the bishop because this is not a check, but black still has to find c5. This is the only move. If they play anything else, you're gonna win the bishop. So they have to find c5, after which you play a3, and now bishop goes to a5, because after c5 the queen also opened up. So bishop goes to a5. Now you take this pawn, black takes back, you go d6, queen cannot take because he drops the bishop, knight goes to back to c6, and now something like bishop g5 and bring the rooks to the center, and obviously you're winning here because you're so much more developed. Now let's go back. The trickiest line is if black takes on e4. Here there is a forcing line, a3, bishop goes back, b4, bishop goes back, rook e1. Here black has three responses. The simplest one is if they go back, you just play bishop g5, pin, and for example, just a sample line. Just do not memorize this, but just to keep the ideas, just to see the ideas. Let's say b5, attacking the knight. Knight takes, you remove the defender of the knight. Knight takes with check, you take with the pawn. They take, you take, you're just up a piece. This is just a sample of how the game might continue. If black goes bishop f5, now here it gets tricky. No, not in this position. If bishop back, rook e1, and then bishop f5. Here it gets tricky. There is a forcing line, bishop d3, attacking the knight again, rook e8 to defend, and now we go b5. The point is knight has to move. For example, if knight takes, you remove the defender of the knight. Knight takes with check, you take with the queen, attack this knight. This is important. Wait, does this move work? Let me just check. Okay, it's not. Yeah, black has this weird move. So queen takes is the best, and obviously it also looks nice because you're keeping your pawns together. The point is you're attacking the rook, so black is most likely gonna take, and then you just win the knight and you're up a piece. What if the last move? What if rook e8 immediately? You go bishop g5, attacking the queen. If the queen moves, you go queen d3, attacking the knight again. Let's say knight takes, you have pressure on this pawn. Black can go wrong, for example, with just g6. There is a fork already, so obviously you just have a massive initiative here. But what if, so rook e8, bishop g5, what if black takes? Well, now you have to exchange the rooks because you have to distract the queen from defending the knight. So you exchange, you take the knight, and again, the idea is queen h5 and just attack the pawns. For example, bishop takes, attacking your rook. You go queen h5, threatening mate in 2. Now let's say they go, okay, g6 doesn't do anything, you just take. Let's say h6. Here you see this bishop, discovered attack on the pawn. You sacrifice the knight, black has to take, otherwise they lose the queen. And now you just take and you win the queen. And black doesn't have time to take your rook. For example, if they move, they're gonna get checkmated. If they take, you take with, actually this is also mate. So black just cannot do anything. So black doesn't have time to take or to play this move, which is not a checkmate actually, because you can block, but still it would be losing if black had time to do that. There is also, let's say, bishop f5 to defend, but again, knight check, they take, you take, and you win the queen. So yeah, this is basically all of the theory that you have to know in this d6 line. So the point is d4, and then let me just do a quick recap. If bishop goes back, you have to remember this move h3. Knight f6, you have to remember if they take. So let me just make some moves. You castle. For example, if they take, you play this move. If they do d5, you sack the bishop, and then this move knight to c3. So this is basically all you have to know here. if bishop check, you block with the knight, and then you have to remember this move, knight to d5. For example, knight f6, you go castle, they go castle, and then knight d5. This is the most popular line. And if bishop g4, you castle, knight f6, you go with knight d5, yeah, again knight d5. If bishop takes, g takes. This is basically all you have to know. So now we ended with the bishop c5 move. And then the next videos are gonna be about knight f6. So yeah, that's all for today. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.